So we got lots of jokes to start out with because, adrenaline, plus you're all waking up and we're having our coffee. Today I'm going to talk about layers of accessibility for scale and profit. And we always say for X and profit, and I actually mean profit today. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. I'm excited. My name is Melanie Sumner Temple. And for a lot of you, you're like, wait, what? Yes, I have finally, after 10 years of marriage, adopted my husband's last name. So I have two now. And that's so our family all has the same last name. I don't recommend it, actually. It's so much paperwork. There's so much adulting that goes into changing your last name. Oh my God, no. So just keep your own last name, ladies. Everybody, just don't change it. But that's just one of the many things that has happened since this time last year. First, hi, hello, let's catch up because life is weird right now. The world is, what is it even? I don't know. Awful, everything. And who has time for small talk? So let's have some small talk. After Dublin, my husband flew over and met me in Ireland, and we went to Galway and Western Ireland and all those beautiful things for to celebrate our 10-year wedding anniversary. At the start of the summer, my son Dylan graduated from high school. And then he even stood for a photo with his mother, which I think 10-10 parenting. Okay, if your kid will take a photo with you, I've clearly done a good job. Let's just say that right now. Some other things that happened, solo leveling, I don't know, it was incredible. That whole exchange thing, oh my God. And then I found out K-pop was in my life and I didn't even know it. And then I discovered this whole Felix effect and Stray Kids and r/This Is My Life Now. And then K-pop Demon Hunters happened on Netflix. And okay, so I'm a K-pop fan now. This is what's happening. Sorry, not sorry. I don't know. I'm 47. It's a little weird, but we can have our phases. And also, HashiCorp was officially purchased by IBM or acquired by IBM in their second biggest acquisition ever. And HashiCorp is now an IBM company. And that's been something. And if we have some time at the end, I'll get into it a little bit. And I'd like to thank my husband, Joseph, because Marco DM'd me and said, come speak at Emberfest. Yes, thank you. And okay, yeah, sure. And then I was like, okay, but what am I going to talk about? And my husband and I took long walks and we did all this work figuring out what I could talk about this year. And he said, you need to just listen to me. I was like, what? I am listening to you. What are you talking about? He's like, you need to talk about the things y'all have done for the design system and what you have done specifically for the product accessibility program at HashiCorp. Because even if you don't recognize it as being something special, what y'all have created is special. And I know because I'm at a company that doesn't have it and I wish we did have it. And so that's what you should talk about. So y'all can thank Joseph on Discord. If you like this talk, if you didn't, don't tell him that. He doesn't need to. So that was the inspo for today's talk. And because yesterday, our lovely friend Gossi decided to say that his talk was so easy, your mom could understand it. I'm going to even things out a little bit and say, my talk is so easy, your dad can understand it. So, yeah, maybe we could leave that out next time, hon? Yeah. All right, so how did we start? And this is back in 2021. Our CTO, not our actual CTO, said, can I have a design system? They seem cool. Yeah, they seem cool. That was really the context that I got. And then our head of design was like, oh God, yes, you can have a design system. I've been waiting my whole life for you to ask me that question. And then our engineering manager was like told to assemble a team. And so he did that, and not our actual EM. And then our design systems team assembled and started building an awesome thing, and we continue to this day to build awesome things. And yes, that is in fact a picture of our design systems team. But as we found out, not everybody really understood at our company what a design system was, because as we all know, UI library is not a design system, y'all. And our company wasn't quite ready for that yet. So we had to think about how to start explaining it. And I especially had to start to think about how to explain it from an accessibility perspective, because I'm asking a lot from people that I'm starting a program that they didn't have yet. How do you explain that that's necessary to a company that's already existed for 10 years, you know? So I've decided that this is all layers. And they're layers like cake has layers. Because everybody loves cake. Okay, so maybe the cake is a lie, but our layers are not. So let's dig into that story. Your mileage may vary. So what are the layers that make up our design system, our accessibility program? How do we do it? All right, first we have our foundation. Absolutely essential, number one, top. I don't know, you have to do this. Melanie is telling you to do this. RFC that says the design system accessibility strategy. How are we going to build an accessible design system as much as we can at our company? What's going to be our approach? And you need this. It's absolutely essential, because not everyone's going to be aligned with you and your vision. So if you get this written down and it's agreed to by management, and that management support is critical, approved by management kind of documentation, you need this because you need to be able to point to it. You need to be able to win those arguments when somebody wants to take a shortcut or just ship it really quick or just do this one weird thing or 5 weird tricks. You need this. You need to say, we have an agreement. I know, because I needed it. I had to pull it out quite a few times in the first year, even maybe 2 years, until we were all aligned with the mission and what that meant. The way we were going to work, we needed to be able to refer back to this. So it was absolutely essential, and this became the foundation for everything else that we did. Next, the CRD, or Component Requirements Document. Now, this happens before anything in Figma, any design or any code. We do a requirements document. And all the design team, all of us, both the designers and the engineers, we all do this together. The component is documented first. We name it, because naming things is really hard. We define it, because what is a pop-up? Everybody defines that differently. We define the scope of it, what's it going to do and what's it not going to do. And we clearly delineate those lines. We also include the accessibility requirements in that initial document. So when we go to design, when we go to write code, we can refer back to, these are the borders. These are the guidelines that we're agreeing to adhere to. We also define the API, and I might have talked about this before, but I love this part, because there's always such this gulf between designers and engineers. And, you know, some of us might be like me, where I'll just go talk to the designer and say, hey, this design is weird, can we change it? But other developers, maybe not so much. Maybe they think it's their job to just do what the designer says. And maybe some designers are like, just do what I fucking say. Like, you know. But by having the API defined by both the designers and the engineers, then the code API and the Figma API are the same, and they both have the same language to use when they're talking to each other. And that has helped. And it's one of those, I wouldn't say DX, maybe it's DX, I don't know, but it's one of those things where when you do it right, it's kind of an invisible enhancement, and you don't even notice that you're working better and faster together. It just reduces a bunch of unnecessary friction points. We also layered in an accessibility UI kit for Figma. So if say you're on a team and your developers aren't quite as familiar with accessibility as you would like them to be or hope that they are, the support is there for designers to use this UI kit and actually label the elements. This should be a link. This should be a button. This should be a heading, level 2, that kind of thing. And just providing that extra support and giving those expectations very clearly, very succinctly, and again, just reducing the friction. Now, here's one thing I really like. I think y'all might like this part too. Just for us. So if most people are familiar with Helios, where it's an open source, Ember-based design system, and it's all on GitHub. You can go look at it. And then somebody said, can you show the component showcase? And I was like, wait, how do you know about that? And it turns out it builds with each of our PRs in GitHub. So if you've been watching the repo for any length of time, you just already know this is there. So knowing that, I'm going to talk about it. We have, just for us, a component showcase where we've, just for our own sake, and it's really, we did it for visual regression testing. We render to the component page every single iteration of the component, every single state, every single color. So all the ways we've designed that component to be used are then rendered on that page. And Chris Manson gave me the idea to have it printed and like do a scroll and, but it would roll all the way to the back. Like I tried, and Kinko was like, this will be $1 billion. Are you sure you want this? And I was like, oh, fine. So we can look at this together if you want, or you find it on your own, either way. But genuinely, everything we've designed that component to do, in some way, it's rendered on that page for each component. Now, here's the very cool extra part. This is where we do our accessibility testing for our components. Because we don't have to click a thing and open it and then do the accessibility test there. You should still do that in your apps, right? But for the design system, we're not really thinking about really that integration level when you put all these pieces together. We're worried about the base component pieces themselves. So doing it this way, oh my gosh. And it's caught all of like 2 issues, and those 2 issues were where consumers were using the component incorrectly anyway. So I think it works pretty well for us. Another layer that we have is we are absolutely relentless when it comes to documentation. And I think documentation, I've talked to some of you about this. Documentation really is the place where projects in general tend to fall apart. But we have such a commitment to our documentation, and you can see this at the Helios website. We'll tell you when we last updated the component. Every 6 months or so, the design team for the design system goes through and updates, looks at the documentation. Do we need to be more concise in some areas? Do we need to provide more examples in others? And we're always working on that. And in the documentation we have, you can see we've got like 6 tabs here now. Some of these are even like more recent than I've been paying attention. And the first one is guidelines. And this is mostly for designers, but also useful for developers or PMs or anybody else who really wants to pay attention. One thing I want to call out in our guidelines is that we'll tell you when to use this component and when not to use this component. Because we both know developers really love to get all bendy with their code and like make things do, tricks. And we're trying to reduce the number of cool tricks, and we're trying to just bring stability. If you need a different component, we'll build you that, or we'll tell you why you shouldn't. Lots of things like that. So we're providing that well-lit path and the guidance, so you can really just feel safe that the component as we've designed it to be used will be consistent and will be everything you need it to be. and nothing you don't need it to be. Another one I want to call out is the code tab. So we'll do like how to use this component, or what's any kind of underlying third-party library that we've used. One of the cool things, and this also is from Ember Guides, right? You can copy the code samples, and the code samples are rendered to the browser. So you can actually see here I've got this drop down, and it's rendering it above it, the code sample, and then you can just hit the copy button and copy it. And that is used a lot more than we thought it would be. It turns out developers really love to just copy the code sample and then go tweak it to fit their code base. And then the accessibility tab. We will tell you the conformance of the component. So when you're building a design system and the code bases that you're designing for are 10 years old, I mean, thank goodness Ember is like so steady that we've just been able to still use Ember after all these years and incrementally upgrade, yada, yada. I'm preaching to the choir. I'm not going to say more. But what we had to do was not make their lives too difficult at the start. And some of the API they already had, we needed to bring with us until we could transition them off of it. So we have some escape hatches. Now, our commitment is that every default invocation of our components will be conformant, but you have some little ways where until you're ready to migrate off it, you might have to do some stuff that's not great. So here we'll tell you, it's conditionally conformant. If you do something where truncation happens, a keyboard-only user is typically unlikely to be able to access that truncation. Screen reader user totally can. Truncation doesn't matter. But the keyboard-only user can't unless it's on an interactive element, etc. And then if you remove the chevron icon, the thing that says it's a drop-down, if you remove that icon, then it's no longer conformant. So we tell you specifically when and how and under what circumstances. And also on this page, we do list the applicable WCAG success criteria. So you can actually check our work if you want, you know. Another layer was having a unified accessibility statement for the company. So we have one for the design system, and on the design system website, you'll see that we have an accessibility statement. And we did this in 2 parts because in my experience, you have more success if you give people fewer things to argue about. So we broke it up. And we said, we're proposing that we should have a statement, yes or no? And everyone overwhelmingly said, yes, we should have a unified accessibility statement, of course. And then the second one is, here's what that unified accessibility statement should look like. And that's the part where I was expecting a lot of pushback, but it turns out I'm really the only person that knew how to write them. So everyone's like, looks good. So yay. Another layer, we make them publicly available. We're saying in public, this is what we are right now. This is a snapshot of what our products are like for accessibility at this very moment when these are conducted. And we're in the process of doing the next round of them and updating them. But I think this part's also really important. Saying in public, this is how accessible, how conformant our products are, and these are the exceptions, and we're working on it. And y'all have been hearing me talk about continuous accessibility for a while. And even though it's in Jira and sometimes very slow because it's in Jira, I finally got my product accessibility dashboard. So we have a place where you can go. And because I have a really kind of OCD level label system for my Jira tickets that are accessibility audit related, we have this very nice, here's how many critical issues we have, here's how many issues by product, here's how many issues have been resolved. You can filter by product, you can see all the issues, and it's there. Now I found some shortcomings, like you have to find that balance between telling people it's there too much and telling that and not telling them it's there, like, not enough because, they don't just go look at it unless you remind them, so periodically, I have to remind everybody it's there, "Go fix your bugs." We also provide support for product teams, so we help them with their design, we help them explore integrations with other third-party tools they might wanna use. And we help them get Ember A11y testing and Ember template turned on. It is a surprising number of times I have found those both turned off or turned on, but the useful rules are all turned off because they really want to do nested interactives. And oh dear God, just don't do that. Will you please stop? Um, so that's fun. And then another layer, we got to integrate it into the product lifecycle process. In the discovery phase, we have a it's a Jira ticket. They have to acknowledge that and go read that there are accessibility requirements. You have to go read that, and then they have to say, "Oh, we'll do them," and then planning and checking accessibility in the delivery phase where they're actually doing design, doing code. They'll come to me and they'll have accessibility reviews like periodically. Do you see anything obvious? Is there anything we can look out for? And then we have, before they can go to GA, general availability, before they can release. You could do an alpha or beta release, but you can't do a general release until you've had an accessibility audit and you fixed your issues. And this is a fairly new rule, but moving forward. And in doing this, I found that, well, I really need to standardize what workflows I test, or else my metrics aren't going to be consistent. And what we found out in a design-led company, design-led, meaning we still have conversations, they're not a dictatorship. I have to remind them of that sometimes because they're designers, but for the most part, we're all the same team, work well together, and they've come up, what are the critical user journeys? Now, if they've defined the critical user journey in such a way that I can give it a unique ID that makes sense and is semi-human readable, which also can be a Jira label, very handy, or an ID for some tests, right? I can then use those workflows and test the accessibility of each of those workflows. And then we can measure and track the improvement over time. And then it stands to reason if it is a critical user journey as designed, and it needs to be checked for accessibility, we should also be checking that same workflow for reliability and uptime. And at our company, that's kind of, uptime is kind of like a really important thing, you know? So that's the part that we're in right now. But in doing this work and working with like 25 million spreadsheets, I realized at some point I would really like to have no flies around my head. And can I please have an Ember app? And so we recently had a hack week, and some other people thought this would be a good idea too, and sort of maybe might have won the hackathon just by doing a proof of concept of an internal app that allowed you to not only create new records, but you could find you could check. We put some AI validation in there to see is this is this, is this CUJ consistent with the language we're already using? It's like a validator checker. Can I suggest improved language for you that matches kind of the other language we've already used? No. Oh, so yeah, you can share here if you want to. So this is what we've done over the last 4 years and what we're doing, continuing to do. And it's been so much work and I'm so tired, but I'm so absolutely thrilled because I always knew it could work this way and it's actually working. So you might be thinking, ooh, this nice for you, but we don't have that and we'll never have that. And maybe you're a little bit depressed right now. So I'm going to take a moment and just let's acknowledge how we're feeling. The message I want to give you is start where you are. And that's the next part of this talk. I genuinely believe that accessibility is a technical problem with a technical solution across the board. It is often put on us as software engineers or wherever we work in the product. Why don't you care about people with disabilities? You should care. And the thing is, at work, what I care or don't care about doesn't really get to come with me to work. What I care about is my internal motivation that keeps me going, gets me to do the things I want to do, drives me to do the things I want to do. So I reject the notion of don't you care. I do. I think as humans, we have it in all of us to care about our people to some extent. And as we learn more, what we care about and who we care about can increase over time. But that's an internal, lifelong, personal journey. So at work, we solve technical problems. Accessibility is a technical problem. And we're well equipped to solve technical problems. There we go. So let's acknowledge what we can control and what we can't. And this was touched on yesterday, and I hope some of this will reinforce it for you. We really don't often get to control the business decisions that are made about products by the people who sign our paychecks. We often don't get to control new features. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But for me, oftentimes, I'm just asked to, how do we make this new feature accessible? Not should we have this new feature. We can't control who we're going to work with unless we're the boss and hiring them, and then ignore that one. But often as a software engineer, you don't get to pick your team, right? And we absolutely don't get to pick their attitudes towards accessibility or people with disabilities. Or, we might work with people who say, well, if I was blind, I wouldn't even use the internet. Like, okay, yes, you would. Knock it off. But what can we control? We can control the kind of code that we produce. We can control if we use semantic HTML, if the output of our code will be semantic HTML. We can control that. You might be thinking, no, I'm told to work faster. Gonna give you the mommy look there. No, you get to control this. Your knowledge of accessibility requirements. Maybe that's something you got to read during your lunch break, or make time to read, or put a block on your calendar until you know it, but you can read them. The communication skills that we develop that help us better talk to our managers and talk to other people, how to convince people, how to make work visible, I've got a whole list of books on these kinds of topics that I found useful over the lifetime of my career. So just message me on Discord if you'd like a whole list of books, and then we can go from there. And these are the things that are within the control of a software engineer. And there's more too, but these are just the 4 I want to hit on. And the thing is, we can even expand that. We can expand our statement. Accessibility is a technical problem with a technical solution. Technical products require technical solutions for all people. I want us to think about why we're at work. Why do we do this? Businesses exist to sell products and services to make money. Money is required for the world that we live in, whether we want it to be that way or not. And saying it shouldn't be that way, yes, okay, let's have that conversation after a few glasses of wine while we're sitting on a patio and it's very nice and relaxed and the world's not on fire. But money is required for where we live in right now. That is our reality, and we must embrace it. If we want to be successful, we have to accept it as a limitation of our life. But if we build for everyone, then we can reach even more people and make even more money. Because a lot of times, if your product is accessible, you will provide the commercial differentiation for government contracts. Commercial differentiation for government contracts. So most often I've learned governments are like banks and governments and such. If there's competing products, one of the things they check is who meets accessibility criteria, security, accessibility, privacy. And if you've met accessibility, even if you're a little bit more expensive than the other people that are also bidding on the project, your project will win. I think that's pretty big. So you're giving yourself an edge by doing this and thinking this. And turns out I can say this absolutely does work because this happened at HashiCorp with banks and with governments and with some other large companies that I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about. We did manage to land contracts and millions of dollars of business because we had an accessibility program, accessibility design system. We were able to show them our roadmap and we won. Yeah, I know. I can't help it. Fearlessness is required. We can all make accessibility just the way we work, but that may require some fearlessness cultivation or cultivation of fearlessness. So you could, I'm gonna give you 2 ideas for how you could do this. You could turn on K-pop Demon Hunters and sing what it sounds like at the top of your lungs over and over again until you either lose your voice or you're not afraid anymore. That's one way you could do it. I can't get through the song without crying, so that's not the approach I can take, but you could do it. Or if you're not quite a karaoke person, you could do some fearlessness cultivation, practice and remember. It's about progress, not perfection. I'm going to say this again. It's about progress, not perfection. I am not telling you to be perfect. I'm telling you to try. I'm telling you to be relentless about making forward progress, committing to that, cultivating that. What are some of the ways, what are some of the things you could do to cultivate that? Being assertive. This may surprise you, but I am not naturally an assertive person. I know. I had to practice, right? If you don't practice being assertive, you're going to sound aggressive. And even when you practice, you might still sound aggressive. But if you practice assertive enough, you can, like, there's a line and you can be assertive, not aggressive. So try it. Try curious. Try asking curious questions. Instead of, no, we can't do that. A keyboard only user would never be able to use that. How about a curious question? Interesting. What are the ways a keyboard only user would interact with this UI? Give your colleagues a chance to surprise you because, number one, it's more kind. You're respecting that they are also intelligent and may have the answer. And if they don't, it's a learning opportunity where you can teach them. Cultivate making it the way you work instead of an afterthought. Try including all users and expand the people that you think about. People with slower connections, people who have to work on Windows every day, people who don't have Retina displays. Think about those people and try to have the conversations, not just with the other software engineers, but have the conversations with your designers and with your engineering managers. Get to have coffee chats with project owners and ask them about what they do. Have the conversations. The thing is, the conversations, the coffee chats, and those make the way for the harder conversations. I'm sorry, I can't do your audit by the 11th because you've just asked me and it's the 9th and everybody knows it takes at least 2 weeks. But I was hired to be this expert. Y'all were hired to be the experts that each of you are. And there's even an expert that you will become. So cultivating the practice of conversation is part of who you will become, the expert you will become. And that is going to require some amount of fearlessness. You will have to cultivate it. And become comfortable with uncertainty. The only thing I'm certain about is that there will be uncertainty. It's the only thing you can count on. There will be change, there will be uncertainty at some points. Everything can be going well, and then the next day, everything's changed. For real. It seems like just yesterday, HashiCorp was about to go public, and we were on the road to being a billion-dollar company. And then what felt like, SpongeBob 3 minutes later, and there's crickets, and what felt like 3 minutes later, we were being told that we were being acquired by IBM. And some days it felt like it would never happen, but we couldn't talk about it. And other days it felt like it was going to happen tomorrow, but we still couldn't talk about it. And then one day it happened. And I was kind of grumpy because this beautiful, beautiful thing that was the way I always knew it could work. And I knew deep in my heart, okay, you're fine, really. You know about accessibility, you know about Ember. You're a niche in a niche, you'll be fine. But I really like what I work on. I really like what I build. And it just felt like, now y'all want to come take this away out of you can pry it out of my cold, dead hands, all right? And I was also extra frustrated because I felt like we'd finally gotten through to everyone at the company. Seeing accessibility as the way we work, the message was there and got through to everyone. And we just figured it out. Like all the way through to getting it into the product lifecycle process, right? But as I've been looking at the IBM, how we make accessible products kind of process, I was a little bit encouraged to see that it's mostly how we do everything. They just got some extra corporate layers in there. But I think there's still some challenges here because just because they have this process doesn't mean like everyone at the giant company does it right. And if we really want it to work, then we have to really make it work. Each one of us has to own our part in making it work. But no matter what's next, I'm okay with it. I know what we've built. I know it's strong. I know it's solid. I know and have seen the results of that work. So I'm okay with it. All right. TLDR, just in case you were asleep the whole time, wake up. Here we go. Build your layers. All of those beautiful layers, build them in. Step by step. Progress, not perfection. It scales. Swear to Christ, it scales. And profit. And as always, I will remind you, you do not require permission to create accessible code. Thank you.